Hey guys, 2D Man here, and today we're going to be talking about Zhongli. So the first thing that comes to mind when you think of the CEO of Geo is Zhongli's shield. Zhongli's shield is the strongest in the game, and it was one of the biggest deals why people really want to pull for him. Because once you get this shield, it pretty much makes the game on easy mode. Now, there has been some slight nerfs, indirect nerfs to this shield, as we've encountered opponents or enemies that do corrosive damage or negate this shield in some form or fashion, which has been kind of interesting in a way that they kind of indirectly nerfed him. There are several different benefits that this Jade Shield does provide, and then that's also that it provides elemental resistance and physical resistance. Shred by 20%. Brings a lot of utility, and if he didn't have that, his shield would be somewhat lackluster, and not only the fact that it provides a lot of shield, but it does provide some utility aside from his shield. I will say, in nowadays, a lot of compositions, switching to having Zhongli for just shielding is kind of a downgrade as far as DPS wise, but it can be useful in a lot of regards. So when it comes to a lot of compositions, you want your character to be able to provide more than one utility. In Zhongli's case, his utility is providing a shield, but you can also provide another utility. Now, I do know a lot of people that like to run a nuke build on him, but specifically, while it is super cool and one of my favorite animations in the game, his burst animation is just extremely long, and for the most part, it will usually result in a DPS loss. With that being said, I'm going to cut straight into the builds and the weapons where he can provide the most utility. While he isn't the best support, if you run Favonius Lance, he can provide somewhat of a battery for the most of the rest of your units. I've had Zhongli since his rerun, and I've used him with the Deathmatch and Homa, but when it comes down to preference, I like the Favonius Lance. It has a super high base attack, some energy recharge. What's super good about this weapon, the fact that it can generate particles for the rest of your team. With that being said, let's go into his artifact sets. Now, Zhongli also has several different builds that specialize in nuke builds or support builds or shield builds. Some people worry about just having the 2-piece tenacity with no bleeds, or having archaic in there, or having tenacity 4-piece. I recommend the 4-piece tenacity because not only does this give you HP and increase in your shield, but also the attack buff that it provides helps his utility even further, as he's one of the few characters in the game that can provide the 4-piece bonus. This set just works super well with him and his kit. It's just a win-win. I really don't think there's any reason to run any of the other builds unless you're trying to get a little bit more damage on your burst, but I think overall for your team, this is the best. For those who are thinking about constellations, definitely the best one is C2, as in co-op reasons. This is a good way to provide shield to your teammates for the Vagabond events that usually tend to be harder. And as far as talents, the one you're going to want to focus on the most is probably the shield. I specifically leveled up his nuke because I wanted to get some decent damage for him. Most of the time, when I do use this ability, it's when the rest of my team members' abilities are on cooldown, and it's just a way to you can iframe certain attacks. So if the rest of your team is on cooldown and you're just going through your rotation, that is a perfect opportunity to drop this nuke, which when it lands, it feels really nice. So with that being said, and with the slight nerf to shields, let's go into team comps. So because Zhongli's shield provides 20% elemental shred for physical or elemental types, the teams that you're usually going to want to run him in are within compositions that use Geo or Animo. And the reason why this is because one of the best artifact sets in the game, which is the VV set, cannot shred Animo or Geo, which means that his shield has even more utility in those specific elements. Not only that, but he does get an extra boost from having double Geo resonance, which increases your team members' shield strength as well as their damage. It also increases their Geo damage. So specifically when you're running Zhongli, if you can run double Geo, it makes the team even stronger. Also, when it comes to Zhao, he provides a shield for Zhao. Now, Zhao with a shield isn't required, but it is very nice to have. It's also, if you have another Geo unit, you can get other instances of increasing Zhao's damage. via means of the Animo Shred from Zhongli's shield, as well as the double Geo Resonance. Another case that's very popular is the double Geo Hu Tao team. Zhongli's shield is super nice. It does provide that Pyro Shred by 20%, and it does provide, you know, survivability for Hu Tao. I don't think Zhongli is worth pulling for this team specifically. I think the double Cryo team is actually a really good counter, and the Toma Sucrose team is also super good. But I do think this is solid, and if you have Albedo, it is a good way to increase your Hu Tao's damage. If you do have Zhao, I do think Zhongli is a good pick, as most of the time Zhao is kind of a glass cannon, and it is nice to have that extra security. But if you're also trying to do more damage, Zhongli can help in that department. As far as the triple Geo team, Zhongli is a solid pick for this team. Solid, but he doesn't need to be run technically. You could run Bennett in his place. The reason being is because you already have enough Geo units to get that 4-piece Geo. Goru, if you're running Goru, already has the 3 Geos in his team. It really depends if you have Albedo or not. Albedo will provide your team more damage than Zhongli would, and Bennett being in there would also help. But Zhongli just makes it so you don't have to worry about big hits from enemies or whatnot. So I would say specifically, he really benefits the most here, but he also works here really well too. And it doesn't have to be Ito, it could be Ning Wang. Ning Wang is really reliant on Zhongli, actually quite a bit. The shield helps her from resisting interruption, and it helps her with the double Geo and increased damage, as well as the shred. I think it's worth maybe picking him up for Yoimiya, because not necessarily because he's always going to block or you're not going to take damage, because now we have corrosion in the game and other mechanics that bypass the shield, but the fact that it helps her resist interruption. So to summarize, I wouldn't say he's a must pick. I would say he was definitely more solid earlier in the earlier stages of the game, especially after he got his buff. But with the recent implementation of these enemies that can bypass your shield, most of the time you're going to have to run a healer, and Zhongli just can't fit a slot in your team. I find myself in a lot of cases where I don't use him in my team unless I want to get, I don't want to have to care about getting hit. But with the recent increase in DPS checks in like the later half of the Abyss, Floors 12 specifically, you need teams that do a lot of damage as a team. And fitting Zhongli in there is just very tricky. This isn't a shield check anymore, it's more of a DPS check. And in that guard, Zhongli is only beneficial in a couple certain team comps, like I mentioned before. With that being said, let me know if you guys think you would pull for Zhongli, if you think he's more beneficial in certain regards. And what do you guys think of these indirect nerfs to Zhongli? Do you think it's good or bad? Were you a big fan of shield impact, or do you think this is a step in the right direction? And also, I find it interesting that it's kind of a slight nerf to the Archons. The Archon characters who were once believed to be some of the most broken characters, I believe are slightly going down the tiers as we progress with more characters. And the reason being, as you can see, Venti isn't as popular. I know he has had a resurgence with certain teams in the meta with Kokomi and a couple other characters, but I still think he definitely wasn't where he used to be as far as on how strong he was. And then the same goes for Zhongli. And Raiden, let's be honest, if it wasn't for national comp, people would still be complaining about how copium she is. But she really does provide a good utility for the national comp, which is the most popular team, I believe, in the Abyss right now. But yeah, I want to know what your guys' thoughts are. What do you guys think of this direction of the game? Because it used to be Archons are always broken, but now with all these indirect nerfs, we're getting to an interesting place in the game. So let me know your guys' thoughts. I'd love to hear them. Anyways, guys, I hope you loved the video, and we'll catch you guys next time. 2D Man, over and out.